Now, here's a person that understands the deep state at depth, who knows how power works and how power obfuscates. It's Andrzejewski from OpenTheBooks.com. God, we've met before, and I thought I loved you then. And Adam, if anything, you've become yet more beautiful. Thank you for joining us again.
Mr. Brand, it is great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I'm honored that you would even come back after some of the travesties that took place last time. Adam, thank you for coming. What I want to ask you about primarily is, given the nature of the charges that Trump faces, it's worth investigating whether they are particularly unique or particularly pronounced or specifically and obviously worse than the types of crimes that ordinarily take place within political campaigns and campaigning. Can you give us any sort of references or that perhaps contextualize Trump's charges?
Well, it's a sad day for the American people on a lot of levels, Mr. Brand, but specifically, I'm from Illinois. It is the Super Bowl of corruption, and our governors are legendary for their corrupt practices. At a recent point, 4 out of our last 9 governors served time in the federal penitentiary. And so, we've got a unique perspective on this. It is a new era of brass knuckle politics across the entire country. So, for example, if you're Hillary Clinton, if you have the Clinton Foundation and it's based in Little Rock, Arkansas, Pulaski County, there's a prosecutor there. And you better be able to justify your $250 million endowment or the 75% drop in your fundraising between the time you left Secretary of State's office and 2020. If you're Nancy Pelosi, and if you are, if there's a new Republican president, you'll probably get a knock from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they're going to ask you to justify your stock market trades. If you're President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the entire family on a new Republican president, this opens up a whole Pandora's box. It is a troubling moment in the history of the country when a local prosecutor goes after a former U.S. president and leading contender in a major party and decides to arrest and arraign him.
I suppose so. So what you're saying is you have to have a legitimate and transparent authority to conduct an investigation like this. And it's clear, even from the examples that you have cited, that there is no moral authority. That how would Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi stand up to rigorous investigation? How would the Hillary and Bill Clinton Foundation look under scrutiny in their relationship with some of their donors? And more broadly, there is so much systemic corruption. The relationship between politics and finance and the military-industrial complex, lobbying itself, the number of people in Congress that own stocks and shares in companies they regulate, it's so murky and so messy. And in fact, obviously, that's to some degree what led to the rise of Donald Trump, his anti-establishment rhetoric being what most people who love him find appealing about him. That if you are going to start to address these types of issues legitimately, not as part of a political witch hunt to get rid of a sort of a potential or an obvious potential opponent, then you're going to have to dismantle the machine itself.
Well, jailing your political opponents is no solution. And look, Trump never had a chance here. Take a look at the case from 2011. A twice-running former presidential candidate, a former U.S. senator from North Carolina, a Democrat, John Edwards. Well, the Justice Department came in and indicted him on 6 counts for allegedly taking $1 million worth of campaign cash, actual campaign cash, to cover up his affair with a mistress. Okay, he beat those charges. 5 were eventually dismissed. The one that went to the jury that rendered a decision, he was not guilty. In this case, Trump is being prosecuted for not paying $130,000 for Stormy Daniels and disclosing it as a campaign expense, the exact opposite of John Edwards. So you can't have it both ways. This is a flimsy case, and quite frankly, it's a sad moment for the American experiment.
You can't call America an experiment at this stage, Adam. There's clearly some results are already in. Now, I wanted to ask you a little more about earmarks, which I believe you're going to demonstrate to us is a great example of bipartisan corruption. At the moment, I don't even know what earmarks are. Will you please, as you have done ever since the moment I first clapped my hungry eyes upon you, educate us, Adam?
Well, earmarks are the currency of corruption in Congress, Mr. Brand. So earmarks, they were dead for 10 years. There was a ban on them because they were so abused in the past. Earmarks is quite simply a legal bribe doled out to maximize the power of the House Speaker. They dole out earmarks on these big spending bills, the omnibus, minibus spending bills, to make them bipartisan on the votes. So you give away a member pet project in their district, and then you grease the skids for the votes. So in the last omnibus spending bill in December of this year, it was a $1.7 trillion bill. There was 7,500 earmarks in that bill, costing the American taxpayer $16 billion. And some of the examples are just absolutely outrageous. So you've got $1 million on a macadamia nut research earmark in Hawaii by the U.S. senator. You've got $1 million doled out to the Great Blacks in Wax Museum by Kwame and Fume, a congressman from Baltimore, who actually has a wax statue in the museum. You've got $1 million doled out for a new stairway, not to heaven, but to the beach in Mondo Beach, California, so the surfers can hit the waves faster. You've got $1 million doled out for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. You got $3 million doled out for the Hip Hop Museum in New York. You've got $3.5 million doled out by the Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins in Maine for the Irish Heritage Museum. The examples are endless.
Can you tell us a little more? Thank you for that. Can you tell us a little more about the collusion between Big Pharma and the government? In particular, we want to talk about the Buys-Dole Act, or I think that's right. Yeah, like recently when we saw Joe Biden railing against the pharmaceutical industry, we were struck by his failure to use an existing piece of legislation to prevent people paying $190,000 a year for a cancer drug. I understand that you know more about this than us, and frankly, that's not hard, but would you please share that knowledge?
So at $190,000 a year for this prostate cancer drug, by the way, which is really effective, activists felt that this would be a great test case example for the National Institutes of Health to finally come in and use what's called their march-in powers to be able to knock down the price of that drug. The National Institutes of Health, they weighed in and they did not use their power. They did not use their regulatory power to knock it down. So on its face, this looked like a great textbook example. There was a high price. The National Institutes of Health, the U.S. Army, everyone agreed had helped fund the development of that drug. UCLA had received those federal grants, and they had pioneered the technologies to help that drug actually come to market. They had licensed it to the pharmaceutical company, a foreign one from Japan. So you have a foreign pharmaceutical company to boot. And so they felt this was a great, on its face, this would be a great textbook example to see if for the first time in history, NIH would use its power to regulate and knock down the price of that drug. In Japan, for example, it's $30,000, not $190,000 a year. Well, the Biden administration decided not to use it. And because, I think it's because this ran right up against the Pfizer footprint, against the Pfizer fiefdom. So UCLA, which had licensed the technology to the pharmaceutical company, had collected $500 million between 2012 and 2016 on royalties, but then they sold their future royalty stream out through 2027 for over $1 billion to Royal Pharmacy, who was then quickly acquired by Pfizer, even though the patent for the drug is held by the Japanese pharmaceutical company. The U.S. market is run by Pfizer. So now, Russell, you have Pfizer, when they make a sale since 2016 in the United States, not only do they reap the profit from their sale of the pill, but they also reap on the backside a piece of the royalty payment as well. They're double dipping every sale on that pill. So I don't think the Biden administration wanted to get in the way of Pfizer.
Double dipping is unhygienic in any language, isn't it? It's disgusting to hear of the double dip going on at a time like this. During a high-profile case, involving a pornography actor, it's disgusting to hear that the double dip is being practiced so flagrantly.
Adam called you Russell then for the first time.
I saw that and I enjoyed it. I felt that was more intimate. You can double dip me in the brand or the Russell, Adam. Last time we spoke, you were a good enough sport to pluck at random a book from behind yourself and read a passage. I see those books behind you as your throne of authority. What particular piece of hermeneutic knowledge will you share today, Adam Andrzejewski?
Hey, I prepped a book for you, Mr. Brand, and it's called The War on Waste. I mean, I want to throw a gauntlet challenge down to President Biden, House Speaker McCarthy, to embrace the transparency revolution, declare war on waste. I think they'll find it a target-rich environment at every level. This is a book that was done by Peter Grace at the behest of Ronald Reagan back in the mid-1980s. It was called the Grace Commission. And what they found was, when they took a look at federal spending in the 1980s, that 30%, 30 cents on every dollar was wasteful spending. And nobody, you, me, nobody today believes that situation is any better.
God, you're adorable. One of these days, I'm going to come to that corrupt state you're dwelling in and give you such a cuddle. The day that I'm in that frame with you, able to pluck those leather-bound books from that shelf, will be a great day for me. Adam, thanks once again for continuing to educate us. You can follow Adam's work by going to OpenTheBooks.com. We're very grateful to you, both for the great work you've done and for the beautiful face that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.